So I'd like to welcome everyone to this carbon management dialogue. We're going to be talking all about carbon management over this evening and tomorrow, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Emily shortly, who will describe this event, the goals, and why we're gathering. My name is James Lawler. I'm the founder of Climate Now. We're the group that organized this event. And I'd like to just start off with a moment of thanks, of two kinds, really. Specific thanks and collective thanks. The specific thanks I'd like to give to our hosts today, Rice University, President DesRoches, Mayor Turner, thank you for hosting us, and Assistant Secretary Crabtree from the Department of Energy, thank you for allowing this event to happen. The collective thanks is really about taking a moment and thinking about how lucky we are in this world to be able to gather in a room like this with food outside, an ability to connect with each other. We come from different backgrounds, many different perspectives, strong feelings about the topics that we're going to discuss, and that we're able to gather in this civil fashion and have a conversation to try to understand the potential paths forward. This is a luxury. And we shouldn't forget that. We should be thankful for it. So with that, I'd like to give the mic to my colleague Emily Pope, who will describe in more specifics what this event is about.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to be back here because I'm keeping track of what we're doing this evening, and so I have a lot of notes, and I don't want to get lost, so please bear with me. But thank you very much, James, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I just want to start by flagging that for our in-person attendees, if you'd like to use the Spanish translation services for this event, there's a QR code on the back of your program, and it's also posted kind of on the walls in here, and you can scan that QR code with your smartphone and then follow the instructions to get to the Spanish translation services. And then if you're a virtual attendee, you can select Spanish captioning under the captions menu of the Zoom screen that you're in. Okay, but so as James said, the mission of Climate Now is to share knowledge and to facilitate discussions like this, things that can help us make as much progress as possible to reducing the harmful impacts of climate change. And a critical part of making that progress is getting everybody at the table and talking about what solutions are available, how those solutions are going to work, and what the impacts of those solutions might be. And so that's why we are here. This carbon management dialogue is meant to be the beginning of a conversation within the greater Houston community about what the development of carbon management projects could mean. And we want to take advantage of the spectrum of knowledge and experience, lived experience that's in this room. So you are all here because you care about your community, because you care about how we are going to effectively transition to a new and cleaner and healthier and more environmentally friendly future. But each of you has your own background, your own experience, and your own knowledge. And we want to take advantage of all of that tonight, but I also want you guys to begin to think about how you can take advantage of each other in the discussions that we're having. So I'd actually like to start with a little bit of an icebreaker. If you will, I would like you to get up, move around a little bit if you need to, but I would like you to introduce yourself to at least two people in this room that you don't know. Please share your name, share your relationship to the Houston region, if you live here, what part of the area you are from, and share something that connects you to this region, something that is why you care about the future well-being of this area. So just take a few minutes and get to know each other, and then we'll come back and we'll actually get busy, okay?
Saying that they can't hear us.
righty, ice breaking was even more fun than I thought it was going to be. That was good. All right, so my role today is going to be to kind of keep us flowing, as well as to kind of start off by setting our expectations for what we're going to be doing tonight and tomorrow and why we're doing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by saying again, this event is meant to be the beginning of a conversation. So we are here this evening to share our knowledge, our perspectives, our questions about carbon management, and to identify what it is that we know and we don't know about this topic. And we have a diverse and knowledgeable group of people here tonight who are going to help guide our conversation and, where possible, answer questions. But we know that there's going to be a lot more to discuss than what you can fit in a 2-hour evening gathering, right? So we have developed some activities this evening that are going to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share their comments and their questions in a way where that information can be collected and it can be reflected on and it can be examined further, both in our discussions tomorrow and then ultimately by integrating it into a summary report for this event. Now that report, we're going to make it public as soon as we've completed it, and then we're also going to use it as guidance as we plan a follow-up community workshop that's going to be hosted here, maybe not physically here, but hosted in the Houston region in the spring of 2024. And that is something that we're co-designing with several community organizations in the area. Now, the last thing that I want to say before we get going is that we are going to be talking about complex issues tonight, and these are issues that people feel strongly about. So in order to have a constructive dialogue that's going to help us produce a path forward, we need to all feel like we are being listened to, and we need to all take the opportunity to learn from each other, to learn new ideas and new points of view. And so for this event, we have developed a few rules of engagement. We're asking everyone to adhere to these. And so these have already been shared with every speaker that you will hear tonight and tomorrow. And now we're also going to share them with you. Maybe I'll share them with you. Courtney. Aha, okay. So here are our asks. So first, this event is designed first and foremost to cultivate listening and discussion. And so please allow anybody who has the floor to be heard. Second, we ask that you please treat everyone with respect and come prepared to create a respectful and open space for new ideas. And then the last thing is that we just suggest that you make it a goal to learn something new here. So make it a goal to understand everyone else's point of view and hopefully be open to new connections. I saw a lot of new connections just being made. So let's keep that ball rolling as we move through the evening. With these principles in mind, I'd like to get started. So we are joined this evening by our partners and hosts, President Reginald DesRoches of Rice University and Houston's own Mayor Sylvester Turner, as well as our sponsor for this event, Assistant Secretary Brad Crabtree of the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. And we are also joined by Reverend James Caldwell, the founder and director of the Coalition of Community Organizations here in Houston. And these gentlemen are going to kick us off with some welcome and opening remarks, and I will begin by passing it to President DesRoches.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you all being here. Let me start by welcoming all of you here, especially Mayor Turner and Assistant Secretary Crabtree of Rice University. I really shouldn't be welcoming the mayor because this is like a second home to him. He has been a dear friend to Rice and frequently attends events at Rice, and so we appreciate your leadership and your support of Rice. We're truly honored that Climate Now, the Department of Energy's Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, and the Mayor's Office of Resilience and Sustainability thought of Rice to host this very important conversation this evening. Mayor Turner, your leadership as chair of the Climate Mayors throughout 2022 deserves special recognition. Under your leadership, the organization had a year of remarkable progress on the overall issue of climate change. Cities and urban communities across America owe you a debt of gratitude for the relentless work you do to elevate the climate discussion. As your second term as mayor draws to a close, allow us to take a moment to thank you for your efforts. Assistant Secretary Crabtree, it's always an honor to host the Department of Energy and members of its leadership team at Rice. We value the special relationship we have with the DOE given our location in Houston, which remains proudly the energy capital of the world and well on our way to being the energy transition capital of the world. The Department of Energy is one of Rice's primary federal partners on sponsored research, and we look forward to growing this relationship as we forge closer ties with national labs like the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, and Ames Laboratory. One of my top priorities as president, and I've been in this role for a bit over a year, is that Rice will lean in on our work to take a leadership position on research necessary to the energy transition and carbon management solutions. Thank you for all your leadership, Secretary, of this important piece of DOE's mission at this critical time. Know that we are here to help you wherever that we can. To that point, and for everyone else joining us here today and online, from our nearby neighbors to friends around the country, the timing of this summit and its core conversations could not be more important. Rice and Houston are inextricably linked, and not just because of our geography. As the city has grown and prospered, so too has Rice. As Houston's ambitions have grown, so too have Rice's. As the city of Houston has faced increasingly climate and environmental challenges, we too have risen to the challenge. Houston has one of the world's greatest concentration of energy and industrial assets and the best energy workforce in the world. Academic institutions like Rice University, with its commitment to producing the next generation of thought leaders, can bolster that workforce and guide it into the future. And carbon management is a key piece of that. Whether through the work of Rice's Carbon Hub, which envisions a zero-emissions future where clean energy, clean hydrogen energy, and advanced carbon materials are co-produced efficiently and sustainably through natural gas and oil, or the groundbreaking research of the Rice faculty making its way to the market through new companies like the incredible work of Naomi Hallis and Peter Nordlander through Syzygy Plasmonics. Syzygy is harnessing the power of light to energize chemical reactions, decarbonizing the chemical process that make modern life possible. At Rice, we are committed to helping demonstrate to the world that the transition to a low-carbon economy can and will be achieved, and Houston will lead the way. So thank everyone for joining us here today, and I look forward to an important and very fruitful conversation. Thank you. And now it is my honor to introduce Mayor Turner.
Look, let me say good evening to everyone, and let me start off by thanking President DesRoches and Rice for their leadership, and it's been an honor over the past year of working very closely with President DesRoches and for Rice University. And let me just say you've been an integral partner with the city of Houston, and even as we talk about energy transition, Rice is at the forefront with its Carbon Hub initiatives. So thank you, President DesRoches, and thank you for hosting us here, right here at Rice. I do want to acknowledge also Reverend James Caldwell. He and I have known each other for a long time. And even way before becoming mayor, you know, he has been a community activist. His heart is right there in the community, and he does not mind sharing his opinion. And so even tonight, he was talking about some air monitors and saying, Mayor, we need to put those air monitors up. They have... Okay, I see he's got some supporters. But the monitors are taking place. So, Reverend Caldwell, thank you for your advocacy. I certainly, again, I also want to acknowledge Assistant Secretary Brad Crabtree. I'm going to make a mention a few minutes later. But thank you for being in the city. He's been here many, many, many times. His mom lives right here, so he has a close connection to the city of Houston. So really appreciate you and your support. And then from the very beginning, I do want to acknowledge Priya Zachariah, who's the director. Oh, she's got some fans. All right. So Priya, stand up so they can see you, who leads the Mayor's Office of Resilience and Sustainability. So thank you, Priya. Now, look, good evening to everyone, and for those who may not be from the city of Houston, welcome to Houston. And welcome to this two-day carbon management dialogue about carbon capture, transport, and storage in the greater Houston area. A few months back, Assistant Secretary Crabtree and I met on the occasion of Earth Day right here in Houston. And as we discussed the rise of carbon capture technologies, we also remarked how much more needed to be done to foster a real dialogue with the community around carbon management. So in opening up this event, I want to start by expressing my gratitude to all the community organizations that have helped not only reshape this event to its current format, but have been instrumental in co-creating the agenda to ensure that the conversations we will have today and tomorrow are truly meaningful. I want to thank Airlines Houston, the Bullock Center for Environmental Justice, Commission Shift, Carbon 180, Data for Progress, the Environmental Defense Fund, Fort Bend Environmental, the Houston Advanced Research Center, Public Citizen, the Coalition of Community Organizations, and many others who are here tonight. Thank you to the DOE, to you, Assistant Secretary Crabtree, for being here, and to your staff as well, to my Office of Resilience and Sustainability, and to Climate Now for all your work in making this a reality. I would also like to thank, again, President DesRoches and Rice University for their tremendous work and their partnership with the City of Houston. And of course, all of the speakers from government, academia, and community organizations who, with their respective insights and knowledge on carbon management and the impacts and benefits for Houston and for fence-line communities, will help the dialogue today and tomorrow. I'm honored to be here to get this important conversation started on a topic of particular significance to our city, our region, and our communities. As you all know, I'm not shy about bragging about Houston as the energy capital of the world, and now as the energy transition capital of the world. But in telling our story, we also have to acknowledge that Houston is home to some of the biggest greenhouse gas polluters in the world. We know that the energy industry has been an engine of growth for the Houston region and a source of wealth for decades. But we know only too well that the benefits and the burdens have not been shared equitably. As we work to reduce carbon emissions, uphold the goals of the Paris Agreement, and adapt to the impacts of climate change, we simultaneously have to elevate and address these undue environmental injustices on communities that have historically been overburdened and under-resourced. It is also these very same communities that shoulder the heaviest burden of climate shocks and stressors, putting them in a constant cycle of need and recovery. Just yesterday morning, I stepped down as the chair of the Global Resilient Cities Network after serving chair for 3 years. But the focus has been on communities, individuals, vulnerable communities who are constantly finding themselves in a state of need and recovery. What does being the energy capital of the world mean for us? In Houston, it means that we are uniquely positioned to influence the energy industry. I strongly believe that through our leadership and community partnership with government, companies, and community organizations working together, we can show that reducing emissions and enhancing public health can be done in a more inclusive, equitable, and collaborative way. Prior to this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, there was no federal or state mandate, and without a municipal utility, partnerships were essential to Houston's ability to achieve our resilience, climate, and equity goals. And I believe we need everyone at the table, including the energy industry, to make it happen. I'm proud of Houston's collaborative approach, of the culture of public-private partnerships we have fostered, but I'm equally proud of our track record of keeping industry accountable. Companies in Houston have been very supportive. Our Resilient Houston strategy is supported by Shell. Our Climate Action Plan was sponsored by CenterPoint Energy and financially supported by BP. Evolve Houston is another example of the Climate Action Plan in action through partnership. The Sunnyside Landfill Solar Project is also financed by a private solar developer, and we are working collaboratively on so many, many fronts. Working with the private sector helps us finance these projects, of course, but more importantly, it is also a way for the city to influence the way these projects are executed and ensure we have a voice in the process. Tonight is a night of listening and learning, and tomorrow will be focused on discussions. And I caution all of us through these discussions may be contentious at times, but what I'm also seeing before us today are people representing communities, local and federal government, academic institutions, who have committed to having these difficult conversations. Oftentimes, conflicting interests and misinformation get in the way of collaboration. But I believe opening this dialogue is a step in the right direction, and there are facts we can all agree on. We know that when it comes to the impact of climate change and pollution, disadvantaged communities, communities of color, suffer the most and too often find themselves in a constant state of recovery. The federal government's Justice 40 initiative and focus on environmental justice recognizes this fact and will be an indispensable tool to addressing existing issues. Houstonians have endured 7, I underscore 7, federally declared disasters since I have been mayor. The climate crisis is real, the science is real, and doing nothing is not an option. To reduce carbon emissions and mitigate climate change, the global energy transition is necessary. But this transition must be a just and equitable transition, also addressing environmental justice issues. And Houston is well positioned to develop and scale the technologies needed to reduce carbon emissions worldwide and reap economic development benefits. But as projects are planned in our region, communities should be informed and engaged, their questions answered, and their concerns addressed. Lastly, this is the purpose of the dialogue we are opening today. And I'm hoping that together, the city, DOE, and community organizations, we can create a process that will be replicable, a replicable model for other regions. The team from our Office of Resilience and Sustainability will be in attendance all this evening and tomorrow to listen and to learn from these conversations. We have come a long way. We still have a lot of work to do, and quite frankly, the urgency of doing this work is now. And in order to get it done, all of us must be at the table in order to learn from one another and protect the environment and, quite frankly, protect people themselves. So thank you, and I look forward to the conversation. Now it's my pleasure to bring up someone who I've had a number of conversations with, and a lot of conversation when we are talking about technologies, whether it's CCUS, whether it's hydrogen, or it's about making sure that the right people are at the right table, and the fact that there's no better place to have this conversation than right here in the city of Houston. And I want to thank Secretary Granholm for having Assistant Secretary Brad Crabtree come to the city of Houston to have this conversation. And then I do want to acknowledge David Robinson, my city council member at large. David, my apology. No, I'm sorry. Please, Councilmember David Robinson, a Rice grad, and I'm sorry. I'm the mayor for. I got 4 more council members, and I need his vote. So, David, my apology. Okay, but at this time, let me bring up someone who was instrumental in helping to make this session take place, and that's Assistant Secretary Brad Crabtree.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Turner. As mayor of our nation's energy capital and someone so deeply connected to Houston's communities, there isn't a better person to host a dialogue like this. And I think it was actually in February at Sarah Week when we first talked about this. And you didn't hesitate for a moment, and I thank you for that. I also met with our Energy Secretary Granholm earlier this week, and I reminded her that our team would be down here for this event with Mayor Turner, and she just lit up and she said, Mayor Turner, he's one of my favorites. So anyway, I obviously share her greetings as well. And I want to thank the Climate Now team for all of their work, and there's a number of people from the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management at DOE. I'm not going to name all of you. I don't want to miss anybody, but I want to thank you for all the passion and commitment that you've brought to community engagement and all our efforts to make sure that communities see real economic and environmental benefits from the investments that we're making and which we'll be talking about. And then President DesRoches, thank you for hosting here at the university and for your words. Reverend Caldwell, great to meet you, and thank you for your role tonight. And then I also want to just a special thanks to the community, the advocates in the room. I know a couple of you, in a previous trip, I got to meet Jennifer and Paige. It's good to see you here again, and I know you and many others have been involved in helping to develop this session, and I really appreciate that. And I hope you'll see our participation and our support for this event as part of our commitment to trying to do things differently at the Department of Energy and being as transparent with you as we can as we consider the development of carbon management efforts in the region and around the country. And we're trying to do this in the spirit of partnership, and we understand that partnerships only work if they're rooted in trust, transparency, and accountability. We also know that the only way to ensure an equitable energy transition is to be in partnership with the communities that are affected by the projects and infrastructure that are being built. That's why the Biden administration, including the Department of Energy, is putting environmental justice and economic opportunities for you and other communities front and center when it comes to project development. This is especially important for those communities that have borne the brunt of pollution for decades. And while there is more to be done and we can always do better, we are prioritizing communities in the context of projects that we fund in a way that has never been done by any previous administration. But to be successful, the conversation has to go both ways, and the conversation has gone one way for far too long. So it's important, as the mayor said and others have said, that everyone comes to the table, that we have honest and open discussions about the benefits and the risks of projects and the concerns that you bring about these projects that are being developed in your communities. And as others have said, these conversations aren't easy. I'm speaking now, but when I'm done, my intention is to be here today and tomorrow and to listen and to take back what we hear and to do the best that we can in supporting projects that make a difference. And that's what we want to do over these next 2 days. I'm going to set a little context for the discussions we're having. I'll start with the 2021 infrastructure law. Congress provided the Department of Energy $12 billion over 5 years to invest in carbon management technologies and infrastructure. An additional $8 billion to invest in hydrogen. Many of you have heard of the hydrogen hubs. Over half of those hubs have clean hydrogen production with carbon capture and storage. So that's additional funding for carbon management in the hydrogen side. And after carefully considering how to implement these infrastructure bill provisions that have been required by Congress, DOE announced its first carbon management project selections earlier this year. There's more to come, and we'll talk about the process that we go through to do that. I would note that none of these projects are ready for construction now, and my team will talk about timelines here shortly. Community leaders, community members, and other impacted stakeholders still have an opportunity to partner with DOE and those who have been selected for projects to help shape project design and determine what environmental, economic, and social benefits are important for your community and must be included in project contracts or as what we're calling community benefit plans. While the bipartisan infrastructure law is relatively new, The Department of Energy has a long history of conducting research and development in carbon management, so there are many areas in which we feel confident that we know how these technologies will perform. For example, we've been researching and testing geologic storage of CO2 for over 20 years. I'm just going to share a little bit of context here, and we'll have more discussion over the course of today and tomorrow. During that 20-year period, we've completed 9 small-scale projects that safely injected over 1 million tons of CO2 in a whole range of geologic settings, as well as really large-scale field projects which stored over 11 million tons of CO2. But to be clear, that's just geologic storage that we help fund for research and development purposes. There is much more CO2 that's been successfully stored by industry without Department of Energy support, and it's been for several decades. In fact, to date, over 250 million tons of CO2 has been safely and permanently stored and properly evaluated and monitored geologic formations around the world. On this carbon capture side, we've also funded several successful large-scale carbon capture demonstration projects. This includes the Petronova project about 50 miles from here at the power plant in Thompsons, the Air Products project, which produces hydrogen and captures the CO2 and emissions in the process at a refinery near Port Arthur, and the Archer-Daniels Midland, or ADM project in Illinois. I'm looking at Donna. I know she's giving me the look because I mentioned the power plant near Thompson's. Let me just say that some of you have different feelings about these projects. These projects have all performed remarkably well at a technical level, but there are other concerns that some of you bring to the table. That's why we're here. We're happy to talk about those today and tomorrow. I would just, as an example, the ADM project is storing on the order of 1 million tons of CO2 a year. It's captured from ethanol production, and it's injected into an underground geologic formation. In order to get the permit for injecting and storing the CO2, ADM had to submit plans to the Environmental Protection Agency to show that the injected CO2 would perform in a certain way. Once they started injecting the CO2 under the permit, they needed to show the EPA that their modeling was correct and the CO2 is indeed performing the way they expected it would. So it's an intensely scrutinized process. DOE's work and efforts by other countries have contributed significantly to commercial deployment of carbon management technologies. Today in the United States, there's over a dozen commercial scale operating carbon capture projects, and they're in multiple industries. There are twice that many operating overseas. And a couple of examples, in Norway, the Sleipner and Snøhvit carbon capture facilities have been storing millions of tons of CO2 going back to 1996. The United States also has a decades-long track record in the transport of CO2. Since the 1970s, the U.S. industry has built and continues to maintain and operate over 5,000 miles of CO2 pipelines, transporting over 60 million tons of CO2 each year. Despite this progress, there are still areas that require further examination. For example, carbon capture's impact on non-CO2 air pollutants. I've talked about the benefits of carbon capture. We believe in the technology. It's critical to address climate change. But those of you in communities that have experienced above average rates of pollution for generations are right to ask, okay, you're dealing with CO2 emissions, but what about the rest of it? So that's one of the things we're taking very seriously. We do know from experience that carbon capture can reduce co-pollutants such as SOx, NOx, particulates, and other types of pollution that harm human health and the environment. For example, the Boundary Dam carbon capture project in Saskatchewan is able to achieve nearly 100% removal of sulfur dioxide. There's a reason for this. Industrial facilities and power plants must have updated pollution controls in place for carbon capture to be installed. Otherwise, conventional pollutants, if left uncontrolled, will foul up the chemistry of the carbon capture systems. DOE is funding projects on different types of facilities in different climates now to understand how these technologies perform in a whole range of real-world conditions. The data from these demonstration projects will help us understand going forward even better how removal of co-pollutants works in different projects in different circumstances. And we are now making recipients of DOE funding, and this is important, responsible for monitoring and providing air quality data. DOE has also been working to develop improved information and analysis of these co-pollutants, working with our U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. On the pipeline front, We are working actively in supporting the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. That's our fellow regulator on the pipeline side, which is undertaking a rulemaking and other efforts to strengthen safety measures in response to the major CO2 pipeline leak in Satartia, Mississippi. There, the pipeline operators' lack of coordination and preparation of local emergency response providers led to sickness and hospitalization of local residents. PIMS is here tonight and will be able to provide more information on the actions they're taking in response to that failure. As DOE moves forward with implementing CO2 transport provisions of the bipartisan infrastructure law, we are emphasizing rigorous safety measures in all of our CO2 transport funding. The last thing I'd like to note is that DOE is not promoting carbon management technologies at the expense of other climate solutions. I want to be emphatic about that. We are working to advance with funding from the infrastructure bill, tax credits, the Inflation Reduction Act, solutions to address climate change on a wide range of technologies, wind, solar, efficiency, everything else. Carbon capture and storage is one of the tools in the toolkit. When it comes to industrial sector emissions, carbon capture and storage can capture the CO2 that's generated from fossil fuel combustion to produce the high temperatures required to drive industrial activity. But there's also process emissions in industry. These are emissions of CO2 that occur just because of the chemistry of the industrial processes themselves. If you don't have carbon capture, we can't manage those emissions. So that's an essential role from a climate standpoint that carbon capture plays. Finally, these technologies can also capture CO2 emissions from power plants, ideally on power plants that are expected to operate for decades to come while we continue to ramp up renewable energy generation on the grid. In fact, carbon capture on a power plant can provide near zero CO2 emissions electricity 24/7, and in the right circumstances actually help bring more renewables onto the grid. At the same time, carbon dioxide removal, including technologies like direct air capture, is needed to counterbalance emissions from sectors such as aviation, agriculture, and shipping. These are sectors of our economy where it's just genuinely hard to manage the CO2 emissions. And we're not going to stop people from flying in airplanes, and agriculture is vital to the survival of society. And so direct air capture provides us with a way to remove CO2 that's already in the atmosphere to balance the emissions as we find ways to reduce emissions in what we call these hard-to-abate sectors. Over time, as we get near zero CO2 emissions from industry and power generation, then the direct air capture and carbon dioxide removal technologies can help us start to draw down the levels of CO2 in the atmosphere, which are already too high. So let me just end by noting that we cannot hit the goal of net zero by 2050 without carbon management deployed at scale. This is something that's been determined by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the international body that assesses and validates the science related to climate change. So carbon management is necessary from a climate perspective, but we have an opportunity during this dialogue to talk about how to ensure that the development of carbon management projects and the infrastructure they require provides clear economic environmental benefits to your communities while minimizing the risks and the impacts. I'm looking forward to the discussions and hearing your thoughts, but I finally want to close with this thought. This is not a one and done conversation. This is a start. We will be, as the mayor has said, we're in Houston frequently. We will be back. Climate Now has establishing a process for ongoing work following this event, and we will be part of that, and we look forward to that. So I want to thank all of you for being here today, and I look forward to the rest of this evening and tomorrow. Thank you. We're supposed to choreograph these things better, right? Seamless transition from one speaker to the next. It's now my privilege to bring to the stage Reverend Caldwell, who will be taking it from here. I can't improve on the mayor's introduction of Reverend Caldwell. I just met him this evening and I'm so appreciative of the role he's willing to play in this event. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. And to Assistant Director Crabtree, President DesRoches, I'll get it right in a minute, and to the mayor, I shook the mayor's hand when he came in, and I think he took some of my talking points. I'm gonna have to watch him real closely. But from a community perspective, I am the director and founder of Coalition of Community Organizations, and from a community perspective, the dialogue that's taking place, the terminology, the research and all that, I don't know what the crap that means. I'm just being honest with you. When we talk about carbon capture, when we talk about climate change, when we talk about all these factors, you go to the average community, they don't know what you're talking about. And I'm here today because I need to know what you're talking about. There's a conversation, I've heard several words about the table. Our motto at COCO, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Our communities have been on the menu for quite some time. And not having that seat at the table so that they can understand when Assistant Secretary or the Mayor or the President or any other entity come here and shares information concerning carbon capture, what is that? They don't know. When we talk about the transport of it, how does that impact or affect a community that's more concerned about putting food on the table, paying the rent, and taking care of their children? What are the safety concerns? What are the issues? I see a lot of my little folks that I work with, I almost call them minions, that we work with. If y'all know the minions, they're terrible. They're despicable. But we work together on a lot of different issues, and all over this community-driven or community-directed. You heard the mayor mention about air quality. I was born in a community that never had air monitors in it. We never knew the air quality in our community. I'm a little long in the tooth, but we never knew. And over the last year, we've been able to get 5. And we're going to, thanks to the mayor and his efforts, get a regulatory monitor in the community. And this is a community that has 2 Superfund sites, 3 toxic sites, numerous batch plants, numerous metal recyclers in it, and not to mention Union Pacific, which most of y'all have heard about in regard to the creosote issue. So when we think in terms of what we're trying to do here as far as having this carbon management dialogue, yeah, we're concerned about it. I was watching this up here and reading that. We're concerned about the air quality. How is that going to impact air quality that is already questionable in our communities, first of all? Second, pipeline safety. Yeah, we're concerned about the pipeline safety, but we're also concerned about the safety overall of the community. Well, will I have to move? Will my children be safe? All of these factors. And there's an economic component attached to it as well. Will the jobs be afforded to those who live in and around the community? And along with that, are those jobs going to be safe to work in? All of that factor. And groundwater and seismic impacts. We're concerned about, and I think the mayor can address some of this, explosions that have happened in our cities and things of that nature. And they're going to be occurring in communities. We have a community not too far from here near I-10 going out near the ship town, the chemical plant there. It's called Manchester. And that's a chemical storage plant away from a house, but from here to that wall there. And there are concerns there with the growth of this. How much of an impact will it have as far as infrastructure in the community itself? Not just to mention healthcare, I'd say housing, all of these factors. And one has to be willing to connect the dots and not just see the economic growth and impact, but understand what the impact is. And I'm going to be a little redundant here, underserved, neglected communities. We're talking about Black and brown communities who for decades have had to endure issues. And no one has been really willing to come to the table and discuss it. The conversation that will take place tonight and on tomorrow, that conversation needs to be addressed in our communities, because we live there. As a preacher, I have an obligation, and I can only hope and pray that my other fellow men and women in the ministry understand what ministry means, that you're a servant. And we have to be willing to serve our communities. Our congregations live in and around these facilities that are going to be taking place, and how will they benefit from it? I'm looking at the last one there, other questions and concerns. That will probably be, and I may be the leader in this, asking a ton of questions in regard to this, because I have this, from a community perspective, this deer in the headlights perspective. I don't know. I don't understand what this is and how it can benefit. And I want to know the pros and the cons. Don't just give me the shiny objects, the blinking lights and those things. Let me know the negative aspect of it too. How is it going to, if I want to raise my family in this community or near this facility, how is it going to impact me? And if my son or daughter grows up and wants to be employed or work at this, will there be training opportunities? Will there be certification opportunities? What is going to help to grow my community economically? So when I'm grateful, truly, to have the opportunity to be here and to share with each and every one of you, but there are those out here that I see that could share a heck of a lot more, because we've experienced it, we live it, we go home to it day in and day out, and we've seen it for decades. And we can only ask of you, as you see, you hear, you learn, and you become excited and motivated and encouraged about this, that you see the whole picture. Don't view it through tunnel vision. Connect the dots and be able to see the big picture, who all is impacted, and how many questions need to be not just asked, but answered in regard to our communities. And I'm not going to take up much time, but that's what all preachers say, and then they keep you an hour and a half. Okay? But in reality, I just want the community to have that seat at the table. Most of you know, when you go to a restaurant, the first thing that the waiter is going to hand you is a menu. And you get the opportunity to choose or select what it is that you would like to consume. Why don't the communities have that option available to them as well when we talk about issues like this and other factors that are going to impact them? So I can only speak so much on the community, because the community has to speak for itself. I can speak basically on what I've seen, but I want you to consider those questions, those issues, those thoughts. And as I said previously, I'm a preacher. I go on all night. We could be here all night. But I'm going to cut this short. And I don't know, where's the young lady that started us off? Oh, there she is over there. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to her. And I thank you all for your time. And those of you who are guests in the city, enjoy. I'm a native. I've been here this amount of years. And I've seen the changes. I've seen communities come and go. Matter of fact, one of them was mine. The section of the community that I grew up in, Fifth Ward, no longer exists. And I don't want to see that occur with this. I want to be positive. I want to be encouraged. I want to be motivated to feel that this will be beneficial to all and not just a selected few. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of our welcoming speakers. I was a teacher for 10 years, and I know for a fact that no matter how interesting or engaging a topic is, people can only sit in their chair for so long. So I would like to encourage all of you, before we do this transition, to just stand up and stretch for a minute. We're gonna be doing some more discussions, some more question and answer stuff, but just everybody take 15 seconds, stand up, shake out your hands, stretch, wake up. Yes, this is important. We want you all to be alert and ready to discuss things at 7 and 8 o'clock at night. So.